Hello everybody, today we're doing once again PancreasNoWork, this time Do or Don't Sons of Behemat. Uh, yeah, this is, I'm pretty sure it's AOS, so like Age of Sigmar, and I guess Sons of Behemat are giants, because they are giants in the thumbnail. I don't know anything about the Sons of Behemat, but I like giants. So let's do this. If you definitely subscribe to PancreasNoWork, check out his content. Also, if you enjoy, subscribe to me, and let's go.
You know what? I don't feel like thinking for this video. I don't want to
Hmm.
think about strategies and tactics and how to win the overall
No.
battle or even just a single engagement.
No.
I don't want to think about how this
Boring.
one wizard's second spell from the fourth lore of the quadratic formula will affect the battlefield's feng shui. I don't even want to think about things like how to count past the number 5. I just want
Okay.
to take a big club with an even bigger dude and
Yeah.
smack the goofy out of anything that looks at me funny.
Relatable.
Or doesn't look at me funny and just happens to be standing there minding their own business. As a tabletop war game, Warhammer and all its iterations has plenty of room for grand strategy and that kind of nonsense the thinking man appreciates. But thinking is for nerds, so instead I'm going to talk to you about the Imperial Knights of Age of Sigmar. That is, the Imperial Knights if you removed all of that stupid crap about honor, chivalry, and having much of anything going on upstairs, if you catch.
Yeah, big dude go hit things.
Catch my drift. Get ready to learn about the Sons of Behemat, giants who are here to smash things flat, maybe help out their small little friends, and drink everyone around them under the table. The Sons of Behemat consist of the biggest and stompiest beings in the mortal realms of Age of Sigmar.
Giants?
You could call them Gargans, but I'm not yet being held at gunpoint by a GW copyright lawyer, so I'm gonna call them giants like a reasonable person. I suppose it's a better name than Duarden, but that's not saying much. They have a weirdly detailed backstory for a bunch of narrative dead ends, but hey, it's funny to read, and if nothing else, more backstory for a faction is good.
Yes.
Usually. I'll tell you the story of how they came about from their perspective, because what most likely actually happened is Gorkamorka farted or something and they crawled out of his asshole. If you think that's gross, just wait till I tell you what they actually believe in. In the earliest days of the mortal
I don't wanna know. Oh, Attack on Titan, epic.
realms, there was a being known as Imnog the First Titan. He was the ancestor of the entire race of giants, and was said to be so massive that the swings of his club shattered reality itself into sky, sea, and land. Then he lay down for a nap, and his drool created the first rivers, while his snoring was the first thunder. This is a very relatable experience to anyone whose father has fallen asleep while you were watching TV with him.
Yes.
Drown out the world. Apparently, he had eaten some rocks beforehand because his palate is anything within arm's reach, and these rocks in his stomach became the first giants. Understandably not wanting to be stuck in their dad's gut like the Greek gods, Behemat, the first of these giants, brewed moonshine so disgusting and potent it made his dad start vomiting in his sleep. What he brewed it out of is probably best left unmentioned. The giants rode the wave of vomit out, but just at the cusp of salvation, two of them started fighting over a jar of vomit they really wanted to gulp down.
What?
Apparently nothing is better than puke for quenching your thirst. I'll give you all a moment to get your dry heaves out of the way. Everyone good? Just making sure, because that's pretty goddamn foul. Alright, moving on. These two giants that fought each other were swallowed back down for all eternity, while Behemat escaped by shattering Imnog's teeth like star platinum. These teeth naturally became the first mountains of the realms. Then Imnog at some point...
I have the slight feeling that the giants might be over-exaggerating.
Point got killed by Sigmar because Sigmar is just a badass like that, and he stops being relevant for the most part. Death will do that to a fellow most of the time. Behemat, though, he would go on to become the champion of Gorkamorka, back when all the non-chaos gods of the mortal realms were still united. This was all well and good until Tzeentch whispered in Gorkamorka's ear, and he grew jealous of his champion. Behemat was allowed to pretty much roam free.
I doubt that Gorkamorka would get jealous of anybody. The most realistic is like, hey, you are pretty good. Let's have a fist fight.
Well, Gorkamorka had to follow rules and laws and not kill anyone that looked at him funny. So Gorkamorka started challenging him to match the feats he had once performed or die trying. First up, destroy a city with a great flood. Behemat accidentally succeeded by belly flopping into an ocean, flooding a city of elves and forcing them to live underwater. I don't think...
And that kid is how the idol of Deepkin was created.
I think this was even the item that Deepkin. These poor elves just had to start living underwater because some giant moron flooded their homes on accident.
It sucks to be
go
them.
bother a god beast and keep it from birthing Gigadroths. What a Gigadroth is unimportant. Just imagine one of those Fire Slayer lizard things, but even bigger.
Don't care.
Solved this challenge by ripping the top half of a supervolcano out of the ground, turning it upside down, and then jamming it into the bottom half. Apparently, some Fire Slayers tried to stop him, but Behemat stomped all of them so hard that being short forever became part of their DNA. This is their mythological reason for why the dwarfs are short. I wish
Oh god, I love these. They are amazing.
Could be half as interesting as this. Next up was to endure a meteor barrage from Dracothian, that dragon thing that Sigmar's best friend with. He did so, and the last meteor he even smacked like a baseball back at Dracothian. The scales that fell off from the impact became the Seraphon, which sounds like Blood Bowl if it was about baseball instead of football. Second to last was an eating competition, which Behemat won by eating the ghost of the beings Gorkamorka ate. That feels like cheating, but I guess it was good enough for everyone involved, so who am I to question it? And last, go fight Sigmar. To draw Sigmar out, because he otherwise had better things to do than fight every moron who asked for a bar brawl, Behemat started stepping on his worshippers. So Sigmar came out, and while he couldn't quite kill Behemat, he knocked him in the jaw with Galmaraz so hard he stumbled across entire continents. While he was reeling from that KO punch, he started eating things until he vomited. And that vomit, dear viewers, became the first Gargants. There's a
They sure like something, these giants.
A lot of vomit in this story. And really that whole elaborate backstory stops meaning much, to be honest with you. Some of the giants, such as some dude named King Broad, fought in the name of Behemat, but Behemat himself was killed by the Stormcast using the same weapon Sigmar killed Imnog with. He was going to be corrupted by chaos otherwise, and the Stormcast figured they just best wash their hands clean of the whole deal. And overall, aside from that Broad guy, the rest of them really just wander around and eat or step on things. Not necessarily in that order, given all the vomit involved in this story. Also,
I don't wanna know.
Frank, I'm assuming if you're going with a faction of giants who don't really like to do much but eat, drink, and fight, you probably don't care much about the specifics of their lore.
No.
I'm guessing you just want to smash things, which is entirely respectable because my last Elden Ring character had points in nothing but strength, endurance, and vitality. I like to call my strategy for that guy Poise Break or Bust. So I go for the sons of bitches. Well, do you want your faction to be powerful, strong, tough, and all the other synonyms for those words? Because that's what you get with these dudes. They're giants. By their nature, they're the strongest guys around. No one in the Mortal Realms is going to be winning any arm wrestling competitions with you, so if might makes right is the philosophy for you in life, then you want these guys. Just look at this picture. The Stormcast Eternals are, well, eternal, and they're booking it because this giant just happens to be walking around nearby. These dudes are scary. Another point in their favor lore-wise is that they're not in danger of going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah, that's something in common with most Age of Sigmar factions, but a lot of the time that's achieved by the faction either being beyond counting, like the Skaven, or because they regularly receive divine intervention, such as with the Lumineth. The Sons of Behemat achieve this by virtue of the fact that they're unstoppable killing machines. Their gatherings are called stomps, because any words more than 2 syllables are beyond the capabilities of these guys. And when a big enough stomp gathers, it's not so much an army as it is a natural disaster. You know what? It's just the rumbling. Aaron Yeager, eat your heart out, because these giants are ready to step on anything that gets in their way. In fact, that's a pro all on its own. If you like Attack on Titan and sympathize with the Titans more than anyone else, just play these guys. And if you really hate all that crap people go on about with things like divine cause and justice,
boring,
like that, you want these guys the most. I did exaggerate a bit for laughs earlier with their irrelevance to the plot and lack of stories and stuff. King Broad is actually pretty cool now that I've been reading about him. He was sort of an interim ruler while Behemat was taking a nap, and when his father was slain, he was driven to grief and now fights in his name. Hell, he dislikes Kragnos and calls him a false idol, saying that giants should never worship him because Behemat is the only being worthy of their praise. That's some cool stuff, I won't lie. But also consider that for the average giant, you just want to smash and eat. So I guess this is actually kind of a 2-for-1 point. You actually can find some meaningful narratives in the Sons of Behemat, but if you could not care any less and just want to fluff your army
both is fine.
Kind of talking natural disaster, go for it. You know what else they got going for them in the lore?
What?
Freedom. Wow, this really is turning into Attack on Titan.
It is turning into Attack on Titan.
I don't like the show that much, and yet here I am.
Heresy.
But in all honesty, the Sons of Behemat are perhaps the least beholden to anyone out of all the Warhammer factions, including 40k. They're hungry, they go eat. You want to pick a fight, go bother whatever army is close.
They're just the ogres, but more extreme.
Closest to you. Sure, they have a pecking order in their tribe, but just look at them. who in their right mind is going to tell them what to do and what not to do, aside from the guy in charge of their particular group? The Stormcast
Yeah, not
Eternals who
many.
were running away from them earlier, or the guy who's now a grease stain on the sidewalk? Hell, they might be one and the same person. They can also just wander off on their lonesome if they really want to be beholden to none but themselves, which works out for them more often than not because of their pure might. While yes, Gorkamorka is still technically their god, he doesn't really give orders aside from smash things, which half the time is what the Suns wanted to do anyways.
Yeah.
Their other god figures, Imnag and Behemat, are dead, so they won't be telling anyone what to do anytime soon. And
Fair
they ignore
enough.
every other god because in Age of Sigmar, their king has decent odds of being able to beat some of them in a fist fight. Look, man, I love Teclis, but if he gets locked in a room with Broad, well,
No.
first of all, that's a big goddamn room. But also, he better practice some teleportation magic, because otherwise only one of them is walking out of that room alive, and it isn't the Elven Twink. I feel like
No.
if I keep going for lore positives, though, I'm going to keep running in circles around the whole they're big thing. So let's get on to tabletop positives. Of course, saying that, we're
They are big.
right back to where we started, because as you can expect, these models are goddamn big. You can have a battle line of models that are larger than most of the faction's biggest super elite units. Your battle line can be those Mega Guard.
I also just kind of assume this, but I also assume that set battle line is like 2 models.
Who I now have to call Gargants because it's the unit name on the tabletop. The MGW
Ah,
would
crap.
need to say your copyright names in the end anyways. But seriously, these guys are beefy. The regular Gargants only have 12 wounds each. The Mega Gargants all have 35, and you can give your general an extra 5
Christ.
on top of that with a command trait. These guys are damage sponges, plain and
Yes.
simple. And as you can expect, they hit like trucks. They are all about
Yeah.
smashing things to bits, and they do it very well. The regular Gargants,
Who could have
as well as
thought?
the Gatebreaker and Kraken Eater Mega Gargants can all huck rocks at people, which while obviously not their main method of dealing damage, certainly hurts. I mean, how well do you think
Yes.
you'd fare against the Hulk throwing a car at you? Because that's
Not
basically
good.
what's happening. The War Stomper can also throw the bodies of people he's killed with a pile-in move, but it's kind of unreliable and still requires getting close, so its usage as a ranged option is kind of meh. But once they get stuck in is when the real fun begins. While they do all have a damage bracket that worsens their abilities as they accumulate wounds, initially even the basic Gargant has
Who
4 hits with
cares?
its mighty club attack. Or you can just headbutt someone for 4 damage a pop. And look, I can go on about the specifics of how each of the Mega Gargants can beat the hell out of things in their own way, but that'd end up being incredibly boring. We're here in the
Yes.
spirit of hit thing with rocks, so let's not overthink
Yes.
it. I'll just sum it up like this. Take Gatebreakers for pure damage, War
Christ, they are expensive. I just assume that the Minecraft Gargant is probably like the cheapest model. That's $70.
Stompers for dealing with hordes, Beast Smashers for dealing with monsters, and Kraken Eaters for some surprisingly effective tactical dickery. As for some more general stuff, when you charge into a unit, you're almost guaranteed to be dealing mortal wounds on that
That
alone.
makes
the Mega
sense.
Gargants do it better because they're bigger, but even the lowliest
Makes
Gargant
sense.
can bring the pain just by walking into the enemy. The
Makes
Mega Gargants
sense.
also have the Death Grips ability, which gives you Dungeons & Dragons style advantage when using the Death Grips attack on a monster. You roll your
Makes
damage die twice
sense.
and pick the better outcome.
Ah,
Phenomenal.
lovely.
They've also got an average of hitting and wounding on 3 ups across the entire army.
Ouch.
2 ups on the wounds not being uncommon at all. And I almost forgot to mention that when any of these models die, they can cause mortal wounds as they fall on top of some really unlucky bastard. I hope I'm really bringing it across that if you just want to hurt people with sticks, you want this army.
Yes.
Surprisingly good at objective play for a bunch of massive and brutish morons. Unless I really dicked up my homework, regular Gargants count as 10 models for the purpose of capturing one, which given that you
Oh.
can take them in units of 3
Ah.
means you technically have 30 models sitting on top of something. With
Well,
Mightier makes
shit.
Mightier, which I just love saying out loud, the Mega
Mightier
Gargants can
makes-
count as up to 20 models for that purpose, or 25 with King Broad. But the
That's
Kraken
a
Eater
lot.
shines here, because it has one of the funniest abilities in all of Warhammer Tabletop.
Let's see
If
it.
a unit is within an inch of an objective, you can have them pick it up and kick it across the board. Just kick that son of a bitch up to a foot across the table.
Oh god, I love this faction. They are fucking more hilarious than the orcs. Oh god.
You do have to control it, but you don't need to wait till X turns in the game or anything. If you
No.
can get there first or kill the enemy models on the objective, you can just move it backwards and retake it over. That is funny. This
Yes.
is the kind of rule I love to see, because not only does it give an otherwise one-note army some versatility, but it's also just really silly to imagine. Picture
Yes.
the objective as some ancient relic from the world that was, perhaps a
And
remnant of a magical
get
experiment that High
kicked.
Elves did, or some chaotic artifact of a past ever chosen. Then this rampaging idiot, who's probably drunk on the foulest of mead, just picks it up and kicks it across the battlefield. Then imagine the face on some stuck-up Zinch lord as this dumbass rune
It's a really fun
His
imagination.
entire plan through sheer brute force and stupidity. Just as planned, you magical asshole. Just as planned. For
Just
some other trickery they can do, they can just step over units that don't have the monsters keyword. I mean, it makes sense. Look at how tall they are. Their bravery scores are also better than they look like at a glance, because while they may not look stellar, you gotta keep in mind that the Gargants are single model units. Battle shock only matters
yes.
if you take casualties, and with a single model unit, the only casualties you can take are being completely wiped. Well, yeah, any abilities that target your bravery might cause some issues. In terms of just general gameplay, you can pretty much ignore it for everything but the regular Gargants. And even then, at a unit size of 3, there's not a lot of penalties to bravery you can really inflict on them. Odds are pretty good they're gonna die well before they run. And to cap it
Probably.
off, their artifacts and command traits are great. I'm not going through all of them because, again, that'd be dry as hell. So I advise you go to Wahapedia or 1D4chan or something and give them a read if you're interested further. They're almost
Okay.
all in the realm of this is solid and reliably helpful. Nothing, at least to me, that stood out as absurdly broken, but with the exception of one that boosted bravery, nothing that really stood out as a waste of an artifact or anything like that. These fellows can also be mercenaries in other armies. Kraken Eater for Order,
Ah,
Stomper for Chaos, and the
lovely.
Gatebreaker for Death. Which honestly makes this army even more worth at least looking into, because having these
Yes.
absolute units on the battlefield can fill some holes in an army nicely. And if nothing else, it's a great distraction model. At 35 wounds and the ability to kill anything that gets within arm's reach, at the very least your enemy's going to be targeting them with priority. Be it as a wrecking ball or a distraction, these units make solid allies. Very fitting for their lore too, which is always
It does
nice
make
to see reflected
sense.
in the tabletop. You can also take Kragnos as part of a Sons of Behemat army, though you'd best not tell Barad you're doing so. My last 2
That's
points are
cool.
less rules related and more model related. For one,
Yeah.
collecting these guys is very easy. If you play small games, you can probably just buy 2 of their kits and call it a day. For
Well,
larger games,
yes.
since you can take Mega Gargants as battle line, you can get away with only bringing 4 of them to the table. And as for the models themselves, they look good. The Mega Gargants
They
are
do.
all gorgeous, at least to me, and even the basic Gargant isn't too horrible. Kind of dated by this point, but it looks like a big fugly giant, and that's all that matters in my book. There's
That's
not too
the
much
only
in the way of
necessary
versatility
thing.
with opposing, which is a shame, but your army isn't going to consist of dozens, if not over 100 models, so it isn't that bad with them. I'd
It
say they're
doesn't
doing
really
better than the
matter.
Imperial Knights, who, while also being big stomping units, all look much more similarly posed than the Sons of Bitches. Yes, I'm making that joke again, it's a very easy one to make. The
It
Knights
is.
are more magnet friendly, and if you get creative, you can pose them better, but if you just want to throw the model together as is shown, the Gargants look way more varied. And painting them won't be as big a task as you'd think. Each of the model is mostly flesh.
No, they're just a few colors, and honestly, it just seems really easy to paint, especially considering they're big.
So just take a big enough brush and swipe it across the model, and then 80% of your workload is done. And if all else fails, the worse the paint job, the more accurate it is to how an actual Gargant would paint it. But how about lore downsides?
Well, yes.
Well, you see, the Sons of Behemat are very one-note in lore, too. They're a
Yeah.
random destruction.
Who
But Brad's
cares?
decently complex as a character. I would be lying if I said I was interested in the Giants for their deep and intriguing lore elements. I just want to hit things. As stated earlier, this can be a positive, because at least personally, I think there's a certain charm in playing as someone who could not give less of a fuck about the larger picture. But if you do like narrative, the Sons of Behemat aren't exactly brimming with it. They can show up in large
yeah.
and small conflicts, be it a whole stomp or a single giant wandering somewhere others would rather he not be, but that's about the extent of it. Additionally, they're perhaps the single greatest army in terms of being used as a threat to show how cool a main character is. This guy killed a Gargant. Pretty awesome, right? Now repeat
Yes.
that as many times as you want until your guy is cool enough for your liking. To their credit, they aren't Avatar of Cain, the faction, just yet, but the potential
No.
is very much there. After all, killing a giant is awesome, and unlike even the Avatar of Cain, you don't have to repeat the same character over and over again until people get tired of it. Also, get ready for a lot of foot fetish jokes. I'm not kidding, the giants idolize feet. They view Gorkamorka as a pair of feet, of which one is stompy yet kicky, while the other is kicky yet stompy.
Oh god. Why? They knew what they were doing with that.
Feet are how they interact with the world most often because bending down aggravates their race-wide scoliosis. I guess you can either run with the joke or just have a foot fetish to avoid this being a problem, but to be honest with you, I think you're even worse off in that case. No one likes the
yeah,
guy who
no.
keeps going on about feet. Marathi's
No.
feet get an exception, though. That doesn't count. The simplicity of the Gargants is also...
Yes, it fucking does, and don't look at Barathi. No, you can't fix her.
hitting me as a person, because I am struggling to come up with more lore downsides. And not in a there's nothing wrong with them kind of way. It's just because they're so goddamn simple. They're giants. I can't
Yes.
imagine there's a lot of nuance to wanting these guys. I mean, a third of this entire section of the video was a foot fetish joke. I'm running dry with criticism for these guys because I can find so little to criticize.
Wait.
You either want a big dumb idiot army to ruin other people's narratives with, or you want something more substantial. Let's move on to tabletop downsides. While these guys all have a ton of wounds, their saves are nothing to write home about. Basic Gargants all have a 5-up save. King Broad and the Mega Gargants are rocking a 4-up, which isn't bad, but it's not good for them in particular.
No.
On a unit of, say, Storm Vermin, that's very good, because the other player has to crunch through roughly 10 billion rats with that save, which can be rather tricky. But when it's a single model making that save, he's gonna rack up wounds pretty quickly. The all-out defense ability, which buffs the save a unit by 1 for either the melee or shooting phase, can negate this, but you've got to spend a command point on it. And if the enemy has something that deals extra damage to units with the monster keyword, you can kiss your ass goodbye.
Ouch.
Hello, Lumineth player. I see you're running a lot of Star Shard Ballistas. Would you like me to forfeit now, or do you want this game to run for 2 hours so I can lose that way instead? The Mega Gargants at the least turn any insta-kill ability into only taking d6 mortal wounds, which is nice, but probably not enough to really save you. It's just gonna keep your 450-point centerpiece army from getting nagashed. This is compounded by the fact that they aren't exactly a speedy army. Now I should qualify this with the fact that they aren't slow. They got long legs, and the slowest they're going to be moving is 8 inches, and the regular Gargants can run and charge in the same turn if they're close enough to a Mega Gargant because they don't want to look bad in front of the biggest guy around. But because they're so big, that relative quickness isn't going to save them from anyone with a halfway decent ranged game. While they can get in reasonably quickly if the enemy has something like those aforementioned Star Shard Ballistas, or even just enough plain old bow and arrows, a good chunk of your army may be arriving to the fight severely weakened, if not outright killed, before they get there. And as you might have expected from my rather focused emphasis on their ability to smash things in the pros section, the Sons of Behemat aren't the greatest at pretty much every phase that doesn't involve hitting things. Your range game
makes
can be
a lot of sense.
said to exist. There are most certainly rules for using range as the Sons of Behemat.
Yes.
Not great rules, and they're almost certainly not going to turn the tide of battle, but they do exist. The most can be said of it is that your opening barrage can whittle down some enemy chaff or knock a few wounds off a special character to make the melee fight easier. Otherwise, the entire game style of your army is based around getting into melee range and just going to town. While there are other armies like Khorne who also do this, Khorne has 4 more models on the tabletop to work with. You can flank and use diversionary tactics with him. With the Sons of Behemat, it's not impossible to play a 2,000-point game with 4 models, which while awesome, means that there's little room for proper strategy. Rush forward, stomp, clean house. That's your entire game plan. While your enemy more than likely has every other phase in the game to work with. The Sons also can't do magic. There is an artifact that lets you cast an endless spell, but no one in their right mind is going to call that having a proper magical game.
No, it
basically
isn't.
A turn-based From Software boss. The enemy may all be weak. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oops.
Hi, Jazz. Dog jump scare while I was recording. Anyways, as I was saying, the enemies may all be weaker than you, but they're going to be doing all sorts of things, like casting spells, firing bows, and getting a few sneaky hits in.
Boring suckers can't take a real fight.
All the while, all you can really do is clobber anything that gets within range. That's a pretty fitting comparison now that I think of it, given that FromSoft has had a few giant bosses every now and then. I like the Dark Souls 2 giant designs. These massive yet lanky creatures with a black hole for a face. They look cool.
They look cool
too, but he can't be my favorite because I get sad every time I think about him and Sigward. But to get back on topic, out of every army in Warhammer, you're probably the most predictable one out there. Other factions may have their gimmicks that can be planned around, but more than any other, the opponent knows what you're gonna do almost down to the move. And as you can expect for an army of such big and expensive models, losing even one can cripple you depending on how far into the game you are. Fitting, given that they're basically Age of Sigmar's Imperial Knights. While the regular Gargants are more or less meat shields that can hit hard, you still don't want them dying before they can come into range. The 3 or so models you kill with their range attack isn't enough to make up for the 3 of them dying before they get into melee. That unit of the 3 regular Man Crusher Gargants, by the way, is 450 points. The cheapest Mega Gargant, the War Stomper, is also 450 points. If they die before they get into melee range, those points are just gone. And if something really goes wrong and that happens in the first couple turns of the game, you've probably lost. And of course, damage brackets mean that even if the Sons aren't dying, they're only getting worse as time goes on. If you're running King Broad, he does have a prayer that lets him heal all units D3 wounds back, which can help the damage bracket issue, but it's not going to be enough to save you when your opponent starts concentrating firepower. I should play Empire at War again. And lastly, money. At the cheapest end I could think of, which is to collect one single Mega Gargant and the rest regular Gargants, a full 2,000 point army is going to run you 690 USD for 3 Man-Coacher mobs and King Broad.
Ouch.
That's 1,900 points, by the way. That's not as bad as a lot of armies in Warhammer, don't get me wrong, but you're buying them in hefty bundles of either 160 bucks or 210 bucks. And if you go all in on 4 Mega Gargants, that'll be running you around 840 USD. So while not perhaps the most expensive army, as you'd expect, you'll be feeling all of those purchases.
Yes.
This is about my video on the Sons of Behemat. Very simple, and probably never going to be top tier unless they get a balance change that gives them an extra 40 wounds a pop, but quite frankly, who cares? Play an army because it's fun, not because it's meta. And like I said, since you can slot a Mega Gargant into any army as a mercenary, you might as well consider giving them at least a bit of a chance. Thank you, as always, to my wonderful channel members. You are the big stick to my Gargant, letting me hit my goals as a channel.
Yes. Also, many thanks to his channel members.
Horrible, but you know what?
They're amazing for supporting this dude.
This video. That's the first thing I came up with, and I'm sticking with it. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member.
Do it.
Thank you for watching, and take care out there.
Yes. And joke.
How much do you think the Sons of Behemat are packing? Like, do you think relative to their size, the average schlong...
Enough PancreasNoWork for today. Probably quite a lot. Anyway, bye.